College organized a conversation with a young entrepreneur whose company was booming. I was asked to moderate the session. From the list of attendees, I realized it was Zach. After discussing, we had coffee to catch up. He told me everything, including that his mother married a very wealthy man at work who reared him and supported his business. After seeing my portfolio, he advised I apply for a position. I initially declined the offer because I thought it would be unpleasant, but after his relentless encouragement, I accepted. Zach and I grew closer over the next 6 months, and my career was doing well. Zach proposed to me one night after everyone had left except for us, saying he was sorry for breaking up with me and did not want to risk rekindling our relationship. I said yes despite my emotions. We told everyone the next day, but his mother was upset. His meal to get to know us failed miserably. In private, his mother called my family and me gold diggers. She was sweet and kind toward him when we were together. I reminded her that we tried hard to leave the area instead of marrying a rich man, which would have been easier. I then told Zach about his mother's comments, which he asked me to ignore. My relationship with Zach worsened over the next few months because his mother fed him a lot of stuff, and Zach believed it. For our relationship to survive, I implored him to trust me, and after many ups and downs, we decided to marry and elope. Though sad at missing the wedding, his mother stayed calm throughout the reception. Zach and I married in our house. My sister called me on Sunday to seek for startup funding for her new business. I told her I'd stop calling and think. Zach asked what I was talking about after hearing me. I informed him that I would save money for my sister's new business. Since we were now a family, he offered to pay the full sum without questions. His gesture moved me, and I agreed. Zach worried about his financial commitment to my sister's business as it plummeted over the next few months. His icy, dismissive manner toward me at home showed his frustration. We stopped talking to avoid the tension caused by trivial conflicts. When he neglected our first anniversary, our marriage hit its peak strain. I also chose to visit my parents. Zach and I planned a little family gathering following our anniversary and played the perfect hosts because we had already planned and paid for everything. Zach's mother called to say she had found his perfect match and requested me to leave. I stopped talking to her and told her to get real. She ended the call quickly, saying she didn't like it. I talked to Zach about his mother at home to prepare for the gathering. Zach was drunk and ignored me. The next day, Zach and I were so tense that even my distant cousins asked if something was wrong. I tried, but Zach shrugged and left. His return included an envelope he said had proof of my infidelity. I was surprised and opened the envelope. I included divorce documents and improper photos of myself with another man. Despite not understanding how, I tried to convince Zach that it was not true. He ignored me and told me to leave. He also said he should have followed his mother's advice and not joined a gold mining family. Much was beyond my comprehension. My sister and I left after deciding to take me. I sobbed at my parents' house while showing them the photos and explaining that I hadn't been cheating on Zach and didn't know what they were. They comforted me, and my sister told us the photos had been edited. Since everything made sense, we decided to talk to Zach the next day. Zach knocked on the door the next day before my sister and I left. I thought he was nervous, but he only wanted me to sign the forms quickly. We sat down. I also told him I hadn't cheated, and that the photos looked fake because my face wasn't visible. After hearing, he said he had lost all trust in me since seeing the photos and wanted a divorce. Despite my efforts, he insisted that I sign the forms or he would sue my sister for fraud for receiving his money without a contract. I was surprised by his comment and tried to change it. I could hear my heart racing in my head and begged him to solve the problem instead of ending our collaboration. However, he insisted on ending our relationship and left me. Even though I was in disarray, I didn't want to touch him because of his status. However, I did not read or sign the divorce documents. Discovered I was 2 months pregnant, and my attorney requested child support from Zach. Zach was also paying me alimony, which I was unaware of. Zach stopped me as we left the courtroom and told me he was glad we were breaking up because he thought we were gold diggers. Because of his behavior, I couldn't respond because it broke my heart. Zach was happy with our shared custody agreement once we worked through our difficulties. His mother demanded full custody and more money throughout this time. After I finished with her, I emailed her and Zach to notify them that my child was not for sale and that I would pursue harassment charges if she did. But it again. Zach advised his mother to stay away after reading this. Until a friend of Zach's told me his mother was trying to convince him to marry a girl in her group. I didn't know who made or posted the fake photographs. Who could have done either was beyond me. Zach ignored his mother despite being devastated by the divorce. However, since she had been visiting his office daily for 2 to 3 weeks, everyone knew how desperate she was. Hearing this, I realized that my mother-in-law must have created those images to harm me and her son. I was furious with her and wanted revenge, but I also wanted to do what was best for my child, so I let it go until the right moment. I received an email from my mother-in-law 6 months after our divorce. She accidentally supplied my email address to the girl my mother-in-law was trying to get Zach to marry. My mother-in-law was divorcing and realized Zach couldn't afford her lavish lifestyle. This new female received instructions on how to seduce Zach and steal his money in the email. I called her after she signed off with her phone number to ask why she would hurt her child. She seemed unfazed despite taking time to catch up. She said Zach would not trust her no matter what she told him. After hearing her perspective, I declined the call and emailed Zach. I called him, but he didn't answer. Thus, I concluded that he had read it and did not want to talk to me. I gave birth to a wonderful girl while divorce processes continued for months. While Zach was away, he created a trust fund in her name, showing amazing support. Since he hadn't married her and I hadn't heard from my mother-in-law, I thought she had left him. After a year, we divorced. I left the city and started over when my daughter was older. I moved from my parents' residence. Zach unexpectedly showed up at my door. This surprised me because we hadn't talked since the divorce. He appeared to be jogging because he had sweat on his clothes. I asked him why he entered. After learning the basis for our divorce, he voiced his anguish and regret. I was confused, but he said that he was at his mother's house while his stepfather and mother were fighting. He found my infidelity photos in her closet while looking for a towel. That surprised him because he had never seen those photos saved to me. He sneakily brought them home. After that, he remembered my claim that the photos were altered and had a photographer friend check them out a few days later. Exam results supported my assumptions. He realized his mother was responsible and rushed to apologize. I cried because I was proven innocent, not because I felt sorry for him. I told him that he should have trusted me from the start, and that I was surprised. My spouse filed for divorce and said he was evidence that I cheated. However, my mill, who broke my marriage and tried to steal from my ex-spouse, organized this. My husband Zach, 27, and I, 25, divorced this year due to bogus claims. I always suspected his mother was involved, but a mistake she made 6 months ago proved it. I thought Zach had learned about her too, but he only learned it now and is in trouble. Zach and I knew each other as children because we lived nearby. Because many low-income families sought refuge in our region, it became notorious. Due to job loss, my parents moved there with my younger sister and myself to save money. Zach's family has been there a while. Zach was raised by his parents. Because his mother was drug, he told me. After careful investigation, he discovered that his mother had had some paperwork signed by him to ensure that she would keep some for our daughter. Despite finding it unusual, he signed the document to avoid his mother forcing him to marry that girl again. He added that he became engaged to the girl after his mother divorced his stepfather and persuaded him to marry her while she was inebriated at the hospital. Alcohol poisoning prompted her marriage. After things improved, she got him to sign another batch of documents and told him they were vendor contracts related to his engagement. He signed the contracts after reading them because they didn't seem fake. He said he could not understand the materials and was afraid. We agreed that contacting his attorney immediately was best. Zach's attorney, his stepdad's brother, was amazed that my mother-in-law could pull off such a complicated trick. Despite his compassion, he wanted us to know the reality. Her conviction was not supported by this evidence. After I mentioned the email, he said, she could find 100 ways to disprove it. Her confession was the only option to legally reclaim the stolen papers. Zach and I returned to our houses to think about it and keep it a secret after thanking him. Zach's mother didn't like me, so I figured if I got under her skin, she'd confess her whole plan. After Zach's approval, I called my mother-in-law the next day and recorded the discussion. She only answered the phone the third time and was rude, asking why I was bothering her. Since I didn't like talking to her either, I asked her why she ended Zach and my marriage. The stress left her speechless. I said that she was trying to take Zach's riches and that I was curious why it was so crucial to terminate our marriage. After several failed efforts, she finally confessed. I was in Zach's life, but she said he wouldn't listen to her. She believed he trusted me most, and betraying that confidence would weaken him and allow her to get into his thoughts. She said a friend photoshopped and emailed the photos to Zach's office. Despite my disappointment, I tried to ask her about the email, but she didn't say anything, so I ended the call. Zach listened to the audio file I sent him and told me he wanted to talk to his fiancée. Zach invited her to a fancy restaurant the next day. Since they had never dated before the engagement, he started by asking her about her family. Zach was frustrated because she couldn't answer her parents' basic questions. He asked his mother to tell the truth before it was too late because she was moving quickly with her plan. In a moment of vulnerability, she told him she was a college student who had met her at yoga class, not his mother's friend's daughter. She told his mother about her money problems, she said. She added that his mother had criticized him and that he stole her riches, prompting her to want it back. His mother suggested feigning money and marrying Zach to get affluent. Zach was overtaken with emotion and offered to fund her studies if she helped him expose his mother. After saying she would think about it, she left. After that, Zach came over and told me everything about his new fiancée. At that moment, she called him to say she was willing to work with him since she didn't want to cheat like his mother had. Zach thanked her and promised to contact her about the idea soon. I told my sister everything to get her advice, and she planned a plan to capture my mother-in-law, revealing her plans to grab Zach's fortune. I called Zach while my sister explained the plan. She said we might persuade Zach's fiancée, who was his mother's collaborator, to set up a secret meeting with Zach's mother to divulge the plot or reveal it to Zach. She said we might ask her to tell Zach about the plan. If Zach's mother agreed to talk to her, she might install secret cameras at her house to record the conversation and capture her. Zach thought it was an excellent idea and asked his fiancée to join. We proceeded with the proposition following her permission. Stacy called Zach's mother to discuss the idea. She faced pushback, and Zach's mother asked why she was interested in the plan. Stacy said she didn't know Zach's mother's objectives and wanted to be part of the plan to avoid being used. Zach's mother agreed to meet her at home the next day after some trepidation. While waiting for Zach's mother, they hid cameras under paintings and vases. Stacy couldn't contribute once Zach's mother sat down. Stacy interpreted the inference and asked about Zach's mother's agreements. She asked how Stacy knew, and Stacy said Zach told her. Zach's mother replied that the documents held his property and bank savings. Stacy asked if it wasn't enough. Zach's mother said they had to do more to keep up her lifestyle. She also planned to marry Stacy and Zach, make Stacy Zach's firm nominee, and have Zach die in an accident so she could get the money. Stacy was shocked, yet she asked if such extreme measures were necessary. Zach's mother lied about him to excuse her murder plot. Stacy agreed without speaking to avoid compromising her cover. She asked about the plan in advance, and Zach's mother said we'll think about it. Stacy gave us her footage after leaving. My sister and I cried as we imagined my ex-mother-in-law's terrible nature and how hard it must be for Zach to see it personally. Zach kept his cool and said he had another plan to catch his mother. It was enough to catch her, but she wanted to prove she was not who she said she was before turning her over to the authorities. Since his mother was interested in his business, he said he would pretend to give it to her once he died. Thus Stacy would not have to marry him, and he could expose his mother to everyone. We agreed since it was his payback for what he had gone through. We explained our technique to his attorney and showed him our tape the next day. He was fine with it if no one was hurt. Zach called his mother home and told her the situation was dire to carry out his plan. His mother arrived. He told her his life had lost significance since divorcing me. He told her he wanted to quit the business and everything else to live peacefully in the mountains. Zach tried to persuade his mother to change his mind, but he stated his decision was permanent and that he would leave her his money. Zach's mother was surprised but happy. He told his mother he would host a farewell party to meet everyone one more time when his will was in place, and that she needed to sign certain paperwork before he could start. His mother approved it. His mother called Stacy shortly after her meeting with Zach to dissuade her from joining in the conspiracy, so he was able to collect the paperwork she had signed before. After getting the money, she agreed to pay Stacy. Stacy enthusiastically asked her what her plan was for Zach, and she blurted out that she wanted to shove him over the terrace during his leaving party and get all the cash. Zach learned from Stacy via text. Zach made his fake will and planned the party for the next month. He also completed all the work. He got her signature on the documents. The whole goal of his goodbye party light show was to call attention to his mother if she pushed him. While walking on the terrace with his mother, he planned to turn out the lights and replace himself with a mannequin, which his mother would push. Installing night cameras allowed him to present evidence later. Everything went as planned. Zach welcomed everyone and announced his ambitions. Following her son's death, his mother gave a tearful address. I was invited with my kid, and Zach's mother tried to make me feel inferior, but I ignored her. After the night, she looked for Zach to have a quiet discussion on the terrace. Zach was already there, so she followed him. She said he was her life, and it was hard to leave him. Next, she discussed money and how she maintained her lifestyle. She imagined she could force Zach off the cliff once we turned off the lights. A thump fell after Zach quickly replaced himself with the phony. Zach clapped, and the world focused on his mother, who was hanging over the precipice to see if Zach had fallen. After the lights came back on, everyone stared up at her because of the dummy on the ground. Zach caught her and introduced her to everyone despite her shock and flight. Despite his mother's protests, he gave a detailed speech. Zach's mother was finally arrested after my 911 call. Since this is the 5th update, this saga will end. Zach's mother was left alone after the celebration by her husband and parents. After that, she was brought before the court and charged with attempted murder and financial fraud based on Zach's petition. She pleaded not guilty to both allegations. Zach's counsel convinced him that the evidence was enough to reassure him despite her claims of innocence. Finally, Zach's stepfather filed for divorce. Zach gave Stacy the money she needed for college. He returned to my house and asked if I would give our relationship another chance. Since he had been through a lot, I told him I couldn't help him now, but I promised to always support him. Zach agreed to leave. Since my sister's business was successful, she returned Zach's money. Zach decided to take a break from work and went to his mountain cottage. Since my daughter can work, I've started working and am moving to a better area. Addicted. Zach was raised by his maternal grandparents when his biological father disappeared. Zach was smart when I was a senior. I helped him with his responsibilities in exchange for helping my sister and me. This was how our parents discovered our friendship, which led to a sexual relationship. Zach graduated and went to college a few years later. He received some money from his grandparents, and the rest from a scholarship. Despite nobody knowing what she worked for a living, his mother was always away and never said goodbye. Zach occasionally used FaceTime to update me on events across the city during college. However, his calls to me decreased with time. When I discovered he wasn't contacting me, I gave up trying. He texted me shortly after. Moreover, he texted me off. Recovering from a long-term relationship was difficult. But I worked hard in school. However, my parents had been offered permanent jobs and their condition had improved. Within a year or two, we would leave that location. Zach's mother propagated tales around the neighborhood that we were making money by doing illegal things for a long time. My parents accelerated the relocation following some arguments with her. 3 years later, when he didn't react to my email about his mother 6 months earlier. What was the email? He was shocked when I showed him on my laptop. He said this was his first time seeing this communication, and that he was engaged to his mother's dream bride. We sat silently, debating our next steps. After an hour of stillness, he suggested we meet after we had finished our thoughts and left. First, Zach and I had planned to meet at my house the next day. The email was deleted as spam from his mailbox,